In Toronto, Ontario, Alexa Greenspoon is soon graduating from high school. Her dream is to study political science and philosophy in one of Montreal's most prestigious schools, McGill University. But that dream is now out of reach. Next year, tuition fees are nearly doubling for out-of-province and international students.
It's making McGill much less likely for it to be an option for me as well as for my peers. It's really limiting a lot of people's opportunities. A lot of my friends are telling me different stuff about how they can't even afford to apply because then they're wasting the money on applications when they don't think that there's a very big likelihood of them even being able to attend the university at this point. Essentially, it's just putting a bad name on Quebec as a whole. And it also isn't considering that a lot of Canada does speak French. A lot of out-of-province people do speak French.
The Quebec government decided to increase tuition fees, but only for the province's largest Anglophone universities, McGill and Concordia. However, all three English language universities will have to comply with new language requirements. 80% of students must graduate with an intermediate level of French proficiency. Officials say the move is necessary to better finance Francophone universities and improve the use of the language in Montreal.
English-speaking universities alone collected around $282 million in additional revenue generated by tuition fees from international students, out of a total of $407 million for all Quebec universities. However, the public financing of universities has not been adjusted to take into account this additional revenue. The Quebec government is sending a clear message. Not only are we ending a policy that subsidizes at a loss, meaning students who do not end up staying here, but we're also slowing the decline of the French language in Montreal. The higher education system plays a key role in reversing this trend.
The news took many by surprise, prompting an uproar among some student unions and the opposition in Quebec.
It's totally irresponsible for the government and the higher education minister to put this measure in place.
33,618 in a month. This is the most popular petition submitted to the National Assembly. It was presented by students across Quebec.
The fervent opposition spilled over to the streets of Montreal. McGill University officials call the policy unfair and a threat to their institution.
This
leaves us with fees that are twice the amount that a student in Toronto would pay or in British Columbia for most programs.
To add the obligation to teach French to a level 5 to students, 80% of the students, and on top of that, the letter that I received from the minister, it actually threatens that we will impose further financial penalties on the universities if they fail to achieve 80%, a target that's unachievable. If the government actually sat down and took the trouble to understand what it takes to take people to that level of French, 80% of the people, I think they would not be saying that. What I'm seeing is a lack of effort to understand.
To soften the financial blow, McGill and Concordia have both announced new bursaries for out-of-province students. Concordia is offering up to $4,000 for applicants with high academic performance.
We'll talk about it today. It's the article that we're working on for the European Review on International Students and Recruitment in Canada.
The mood is different here at this French language university. Some are celebrating the fact that they will soon receive more financing. The government promising they will take money from the more popular English universities to inject into the French higher education system.
In the international vision for the coalition Avenir of Quebec, the government says we're going to add a notion of nationalism or linguistic identity. So the idea is to accumulate more money from international students, but they have to be French-speaking.
But Belgian says the government did not foresee that the policy could end up making enemies in the rest of Canada. Students from Quebec could also soon face steeper tuition rates in other provinces.
It remains less expensive than universities with a similar reputation in the United States. We're talking about almost half as much, sometimes twice, 3 times less. So obviously, McGill would be able to replace Canadian or Quebecois students with international students. I think at this level there'll be a change in enrolment, but I don't think it will affect the university disproportionately. I think Quebec made this choice without necessarily thinking what would happen if the other provinces did the same. For example, if Ontario says, well, you decided to charge a premium for students who come from us, well, we're going to do the same for students from Quebec.
McGill says it's already feeling the impact of the government's tuition hikes. They're reporting a 10 to 20% decrease in the number of applications to undergraduate programs in 2024. A small saving grace, the increase does not apply to master's degrees and PhDs.